Hello, Paper and Glam family. Welcome to the July installment of Book Club. Tonight we are discussing the greatest American novel, Gone with the Wind. This book is America's greatest seller. Even though it was released back in 1937, it is still the #1 seller. It's also the highest grossing movie if you adjust for inflation. So as we have taken on our quarterly classics this year and gone through some of the great American novels, we of course would be remiss if we did not include Gone with the Wind. So this is quite the tome. If you made it all the way through, I am so proud of you. It was a tough one. Thank you so much for making it in kind of this toasty hot summer weather. I think all of us have said that it's like 100 degrees where we are. I know I am like sweating it out here in LA. So thank you for making time tonight. While the kind of feed catches up and everyone gets settled in, we're going to do our icebreaker for this evening, and it is, what are you most excited about this kind of late summer? Is there like a tradition, maybe back to school shopping or fall shopping, that you're most excited about, or is there something in your personal life that you're most excited about? For me, it's definitely getting settled into my new home. Something about the fall just feels so cozy, and I'm just excited to be somewhere that I just love to live and kind of settle in to my new home. Let's see, I think I forgot to copy and paste the order. Sorry, you guys. Hayden, you are next. What is your favorite late summer tradition or something you're excited about this summer specifically?
Roman and I actually got married at the end of September. The beginning of September, end of August. So we usually celebrate a little early because it's halfway between when we started dating and when we got married. So we're going to Yosemite for 2 weeks, and I'm really excited because, one, I've never camped, and two, I've never been there. So I'm really excited to try it out and see what it's like.
For me, it's back to school shopping. My 6-year-old is going to first grade this year. But we usually make a big deal out of it. We kind of like spend the whole day getting school supplies and go out to eat and kind of one last hurrah before school starts, because it starts in August for us. So that's kind of something that we do towards the end of August.
I think Tabitha might be having internet issues. Are you okay, Tabitha?
Sorry, yeah, it froze. I don't know if you guys can see me. It's really lagging. But mine is back to school shopping also. My daughter will start kindergarten this year, so I'm excited about that. But we also are excited about going to Ocean City, something that we do every 2 years. So we love going to the beach and can't wait for that.
Where is Ocean City? I feel like I should know this.
In Maryland.
Oh, really? Speaking of Maryland or the Northeast, Bree and Tabitha are in like the middle of the storm, so if their internet goes out while they're taking their turn, just be gracious with them. They are here live with us in the middle of a storm.
Yeah, so I echo basically what everybody else has said about the back-to-school shopping. You know, being a stationery geek, you know, that's always the best time. There's nothing like a brand new box of crayons every year. So, you know, I always take that opportunity to get some new stuff. For us as well, you know, the back to school involves, you know, the new outfits and the fresh haircuts and all that cool things that come with back to school, of course. For us, where we live, the end of summer also signals things like apple picking and pumpkin pick, you know. So basically, the end of summer for us is kind of bracing ourselves for all things fall.
I normally echo all the back to school stuff, especially with all 3 of my kids are going to be in school this year, so we're actually kind of spreading it out a little bit more than we normally do in years past anyway. But this year, even though I don't tend to actually watch it that much, I am looking forward to the Olympics coming up in August. I usually forget that they're on once it's here, but I do like watching a lot, like the different, more the like human interest story part of it. Some of the sports and competitions I enjoy. My husband did cross country and track and field, so he likes that stuff. I'm just kind of, I watch it, but I don't get really into the competition part of it.
I guess, yeah, I mean, back to school, and mine is kind of, it's also kind of ridiculous because my mom and I still go back to school shopping, and she winds up buying me a new outfit, even though I'm too old to be going back to school. So I love that. And then just upcoming this next month, my husband and his brother they always do this, there's a local 3-on-3 basketball tournament that we always go to, and it's like a family thing, like his mom and his sisters, and so it's just like a nice fun weekend of like family time, so I'm looking forward to that too. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing.
Me.
Oh, Jana, I missed you. I'm so sorry. I missed you.
I'm not on the list is why.
Okay, let me redo that. I messed that up twice. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I mean the same thing, and then as a teacher, obviously going back to school shopping means like I buy me clothes, like usually the whole first week of clothes, right? But this year I'm going back. I'm gonna move back to the secondary classroom from teaching college, just so I could be more local and not have to commute, because in the winter when the San Bernardino shooting happened, that was in between my commute, and so I was really lucky that the freeway wasn't closed down, although all the SWAT cars were driving in front of me. So we just decided I should move closer and go down to the secondary level. But I get to teach Shakespeare, and so as my class, so I'm very excited to be teaching Shakespeare this fall. So it's a little bit new and different.
Awesome. Well, we definitely need to work Shakespeare into our classics here at some point and draw on all of your knowledge. All right, so we will jump into the book club discussion with our usual starter, which is how many stars would you rate the book, and what was your experience reading Gone with the Wind? I loved it. I thought it was such a readable classic, and the language just was probably my favorite part, and I actually laughed out loud on quite a few parts of the book. Scarlett, I think, is hilarious, and man, she just had some great zingers, and it's nice to like laugh out loud when you're reading a classic. So yeah, I would say probably 4 stars actually, because it was just so readable. I mean, it was really long and very detailed, of course, like most of the classics, but the language just made it really enjoyable, and of course the story, I had no idea what was going to happen, and you know, I was just excited to see like the Scarlett Rhett love story is referenced in so many different just pop culture shows and everything that I couldn't wait to hear how their story unfolded, and it was so unpredictable. I thought they were going to end up together, but I won't go into spoilers. Hayden, how about you?
I gave the book 5 stars because I did love it. Of course, I was very shocked about some of the parts of it, but overall I thought the book was really good and readable, and I just love Scarlett. I mean, I grew up in the South, so all the things that she talked about Atlanta, Savannah, Charleston, all that is very dear to my heart. It just really made me smile and made me very nostalgic for home.
For me, I give it 3. Not because it was bad. It's just I'm kind of more into more of like the contemporary genres. It was a good book. It was a good read. It's not one I'd probably like reread, so I give it 3 stars for that. I've heard of it, but I've never read the book and I've never seen the movie. So the good thing was, unlike Breakfast at Tiffany's, where I was kind of expecting it, and then when it didn't like have every detail that I was expecting, it's kind of a bummer. This was like clean slate, so I liked that. But yeah, I'd probably give it 3 stars.
I gave the book 2 stars. I had a really hard time like trying to get myself amped up to read the book with the movie first, and I didn't care for the movie, but then I was like, okay, well, you know, it's probably completely different, let's give it a go. And I felt like the author is a great storyteller, but I just felt like it was so long and I didn't really care for any of the characters. So for me, it was just like, yeah, if everybody dies, I don't really care. So it was hard for me, and I know classic, and I was just like, yeah, I want to know what is it that everyone loves, but it's just not my jam. So but I'm happy that I read it. I can now engage in conversation about it because I'm pretty sure there's different angles we can all talk about some aspect of different things. So yeah, some of the subject matter, and that's not, it just wasn't something that I enjoyed. Like, it wasn't a time, when you enjoy a book, it wasn't a book that I enjoyed. So yeah, I gave it 2 stars.
I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. I like Lisa Marie. I love the language. I found my inner voice taking on the Southern accent. So yeah, I was feeling it. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. I liked it.
I thought it was really good storytelling for a book this long. It didn't feel this long. It brought up a lot of stuff, and I was constantly like, oh, that makes me think about this, and like I would talk stuff out with my husband that it would bring up that I would think about for like our modern issues and stuff. And I mean, I thought that I knew the story, but as I started reading it, I realized basically the only thing I knew about it was that Scarlett was in love with Ashley, and that somehow she and Rhett at some point got together, and that was like the very little details that I knew about it. So it was a lot better. Like I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did because I had friends talk about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna really like that. But I did, even though it, like, my feelings about it were kind of complex, and I'm still kind of processing it. But I think I would give it probably 4 stars.
Well, it looks like we lost Sarah. I'm not sure what happened to Sarah. We're having all kinds of internet issues today. So we'll skip to Jana.
Okay, I know. I was like, wait, Sarah's gone. So I'm gonna be honest, and I still have like 200 pages left, and I've just been really hard this month to read. Both my boys have birthdays, and we've just been like crazy running around. So right now, 200 pages is a lot of content still. So I think it's going to be somewhere between like 3.5 and 4 stars for me, but I'm just not positive. I've seen the movie when I was probably in 3rd grade, so I don't really recall a lot of what happens comparatively. But so once I finish, which will probably be this, tonight or tomorrow, then I'll get the movie and I'll watch that. But I know it's my sister-in-law's like absolute favorite book. She named my niece Scarlett, and she got what she deserved for naming my niece Scarlett because she's got the personality to go with it. She's a very strong-headed girl, but so I don't know. I'm still kind of in between. There are some great things in it, but so somewhere between 3.5 and 4.
Okay, cool. So it looks like most of us who are chatters and most of us who are here tonight rated it 3 or 4. So that's great, especially for a classic. All right. The next question is, it's basically what is your favorite thing about the book? So what was your favorite quote? That's always what I usually go to, or character, or literary device. So I think I'm going to go last. I have so many favorite quotes, so I'm just going to pick one that doesn't get picked because I'll show you guys my book. I have all of these flagged. I was going through and, yeah, I highlight in my books, which I know some of you, that's like OMG, but to me it just makes them more loved. So I have tons of highlighted quotes because like I said, I just love the language. So I will go last. Hayden, what's your favorite thing about Gone with the Wind?
Okay, so I have 2 favorite parts. My first favorite part is pages 148 to 153 in my book, where Charles Hamilton is declaring his love to Scarlett, and she's just like, what is happening? How did I sign up for this? Because I just loved how much he he really loved her, and he thought she loved him too, and he was totally fooled by all of that. And her reaction to saying yes to his marriage proposal out of stubbornness really made me laugh, and I loved, because I too am very stubborn and find myself sometimes saying yes to stuff that I don't want to prove a point. And then my second favorite part is when she slapped Ashley after she told him she thought they were going to get married, because I just felt all the dramatics, her passion, all of her wrapped up into that. You know, she really loved him, and she thought that he was going to marry her. And to be 16 and you think back about how all your emotions run so strong and so deep, and sometimes you do things before you think about it and you regret it, just really ran deep with me, because being a Southern dramatic and quite like Scarlett myself, I have done a few things like that I probably wouldn't do as an adult, but I just really felt all her fire and passion, because she's such a strong woman, and it shows up in so many parts of the book.
For me, it was a quote. I believe it was like page 79. It says, "I'm tired of everlastingly being unnatural and never doing anything I want to do. I'm tired of acting like I don't eat more than a bird and walking when I want to run and saying I feel faint after a waltz when I could dance for 2 days and never getting tired. I'm tired of saying how wonderful you are to fool men who haven't got one half the sense I've got, and I'm tired of pretending I don't know anything so men can tell me things and feel important while they're doing it." And I loved that, because especially like when I first got married, it was like, I'm going to cook dinner every night, and I'm going to clean the house every night, and I'm going to be that, you know, like perfect, iconic wife. And then, like, you know, when life hits you, and there's so much part of me that's very stubborn and has that spitfire, and it's like that goes against what men are supposed, or what women are supposed to be, and what women are, you know, supposed to act. And it's impolite for a woman to just order a steak on a date, and it's, you know, it's like those things. And I'm like, well, why not? And why am I trying to pretend that, you know, that I'm totally dumb to something that somebody's explained to me, that some guy's trying to explain to me? And, you know, it would kind of like be like unbecoming if I knew more than him when it came to cars, or I knew more than him when it came to, you know, like doing things around the house. And so for me, I'm a lot like what Hayden said, where there's things where I sign up for, and halfway through I'm like, why did I do this? But it was just to prove a point, because I know I can do it, you know. So I think that right there was like a really good quote for me, because I've had those moments myself.
The favorite quote that I have is page 421, and it is, "Fate had broken their necks, perhaps, but never their hearts." I don't know, I just love that quote. When you think about so many people who, you know, suffer tragedy, but, you know, that the heart is still strong. But another thing that I did like about the book was this aspect of home, where Scarlett would always reference home and the strength that she would feel from knowing that she could go home, or knowing that her home was saved, or that it was like her personal sanctuary. So I like that was like a running theme throughout the book, where she would always talk about being able to go home. So that kind of really stuck with me. And pretty much the book it's a lot going on, and I didn't realize that there was so much to the story. Like, I mean, when you think about the time frame in which it was written, it's very like it's action packed. So I definitely give her kudos for including so much action. Like, you just never knew what, you know, when you turned a page, what was going to happen next from, well, I don't want to do spoilers or anything, but, you know, you're just kind of surprised at every turn.
I have a lot of favorites from this book. I really appreciated the writing style. I thought that it flowed really nice. I did love Scarlett as a character. I wasn't sure at the beginning whether I would, because it's kind of bratty and annoying at the beginning. So I thought, you know, not knowing too much about it, I didn't know what direction the book would go in. So I did like her. My favorite quote is, I chuckled every time I read God's nightgown. I thought that was pretty funny. So that was cute. And my favorite part of the book was when she finally realized that Ashley was a schmuck and kind of came to, so to speak.
I I think my favorite thing about the book was the depth of characters. Not every character, but most of the main characters. They have, like, you see their flaws, but it's not like their flaws outweigh the good or the good outweighs their flaws. I think maybe one of the main characters who didn't feel like that was Ashley, and I'm thinking that maybe was intentional from the fact that, like, Scarlett was so sure that she was in love with him, and then she actually didn't know anything about him, and I don't know, it seemed like that could have been intentional, and that the readers themselves don't really know that much about him, and I don't know, there were so many good quotes that I couldn't really pick one out of them. I'm kind of like Lisa Marie. I was flipping around in my book trying to figure out which one I want to use. I don't know which one I want to use, so Sarah, you can go ahead.
So yeah, there were a couple of things. I highlighted a quote from Mammy about saying that young women who eat a lot don't generally catch husbands, and that made me laugh so hard. I absolutely loved it, and like the bickering back and forth, and that kind of ties into, you know, Bree's quote about like not wanting to be a woman that's just gonna like eat like a bird or pretend to faint, and it amused me, you know, because that's one of those things that kind of, I feel like, endures, like, you know, don't finish your meal on a date, girls, it's rude, you know, like those kinds of things. And so it just kind of amused me. And then I had to backtrack, I really loved the book, and I listened to probably 60% and read the other 40, and the quote that probably drove me nuts the most was Scarlett exclaiming fiddle-dee-dee. I don't know why, every time, it was fine if I was reading it, but when I was listening and I heard fiddle-dee-dee, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't take it, this is the worst. So that one, it was like every time I'm like, not again, or you would know it was coming. So that one kind of it amused me, at least, if not kind of annoyed me. But yeah, that was, and I loved Scarlett. I think it was Jody in the comments on the chat on the side, you know, commented that Scarlett was a feminist, and I totally agree that she was, you know, an early feminist, and I appreciated that about her as well.
So my favorite character is probably Rhett Butler, because, like, he's a pirate. He's just awesome. And he's just, I don't know, there's, like, every time there's an interaction between him and Scarlett, I just was drawing little hearts, because, like, everything he says is he's just so raw and honest, and he's just who he is, and he doesn't care if you don't like it. And I don't know, I find that respectable, even though he's, like, underhanded and a swindler, but he just, like, owns it. He's like, yeah, so I'm a swindler. Scarlett I'm okay with. I think that if she wasn't so stupid about Ashley, I would like her. But the fact that she just, like, cannot get over him absolutely drove me crazy, because, like, whenever he talks, she's like, I just don't understand what he's saying. And I don't understand how she could then be in love with him if you completely don't get a person. Like, why are you in love with him? That's crazy. So, I don't know. That bothered me. But I have 3 quotes, because, like everybody else, I'm like, there's just so many great things. One, which was just kind of like for fun, but it would be wrong in life. It says, if for no other reason, she hated the Yankees because they kept her from having real coffee with sugar and thick cream in it. And that's just wrong, because you have to have real coffee. Come on, people. I don't know what kind of coffee they were making. It didn't sound very good, so I didn't like that idea. And then it's a poor person and a poor nation that sits down and cries because life isn't precisely what they expected it to be. And I just thought that was a great quote, because, you know, you're just like throwing your own pity party and, you know, not moving on. And then the last one was, Ashley said it, fighting is like champagne. It goes to the heads of cowards as quickly as of heroes. And I just like that because when he says he's a coward, but he's like, but I can still fight because you get like kind of a rush from it, and that he's like, that doesn't mean you're brave. And so I liked that. There are a lot of great quotes in it, and there's a lot of great, pro-feminist things, and I definitely think I struggled with the painted picture of like, no, nobody was ever mean to their slaves. I don't know why the North was like that. That did trouble me to an extent. But I mean, you have to take into consideration that it's where the location it's coming from and the stance and stuff. So, yeah. And welcome, Katrina, because that means you're next.
Thank you. So I kind of had a love-hate relationship with the book. There's so many parts of it that I like totally struggled with, and then parts I really loved. So my favorite quote was at the very beginning. I think it was like the first or second page. I'm sorry if somebody already talked about this. It says, "Yet the serene half-light over Tara's well-kept acres brought a measure of quiet to her disturbed mind. She loved this land so much without even knowing she loved it." I was like, yes, I totally get it, because that for me is like thinking about where I'm from in Montana. Like I didn't really appreciate it until I like totally left it. Like it's been 10 years since I've lived there now, and so that part just totally rang true for me, and I loved how that was a theme that kept coming back, like her going back to Tara and thinking about it and feeling homesick. So I loved that quote and tried to keep that in my mind during most of the book, because I knew that was how she felt, and that's the first thing that really stuck out at me when I read it. So that was my favorite quote.
All right. Thank you for joining us after Puppy Playgroup, Katrina. Thank you for making it. Katrina got a new puppy, but your answer actually is a perfect segue into the next question, which is, why do you think Gone with the Wind indoors today is, it's still so prevalent in pop culture? I was watching Southern Charm, Guilty Pleasure, and they were like, are you a Scarlett or a Melanie? And I was thinking, oh, yes, I totally would not have known like a month ago. And then I was also watching Gilmore Girls because I'm so excited for the revival of Gilmore Girls that's coming to Netflix on March 29th. I just posted the 25th, November 25th. I just posted it on the Seasonal Living group. If you want to take a peek at the trailer, they did it in seasons, and I'm just loving it, but I won't derail us too much. I was rewatching it, and Paris called someone a Beth Watling. She said, "You're a regular Beth Watling," and I'm like, oh, I love it. I totally would not have, that reference would have went straight over my head if I hadn't been reading Gone with the Wind like at the same time, which is a beautiful thing. So I hope that going through some of these classics kind of gives you guys a reference point for things, because I think sometimes, when you read something and you catch a reference and it's like, oh my gosh, and you wouldn't have even maybe known that you missed it. So I just love that about reading classics. But to Katrina's point, I'm reading Frankly, My Dear. I linked it below, but this is the companion for this year, and this quote just stood out to me, and it says, "Land as a lost paradise is but one of the mythic strands whereby the tale of a recalcitrant corner of the country, the antebellum, slave-owning renegade South, is alchemized into a national epic of struggle and triumph." And that struggle and triumph through land is just such beautiful imagery. And there's another quote in here that says, of course, the Union or the Yankees, they won the Civil War, but like the South won a fantasy and of what the antebellum was. And I just thought that was so true, and that kind of idea of land is and just making your own paradise on it is still, I feel like, so embedded into the American dream. Hayden, do you have any thoughts on why Gone with the Wind kind of still indoors?
I honestly believe it's because of Scarlett and then Rhett Butler, because Scarlett is such a strong female that it's hard. I mean, I know some people in the chat didn't like her and thought she was a horrible person, and yes, she was selfish and childish, and she said things sometimes, and you just wanted to be like, really, Scarlett? That's what you think right now while Melanie's about to pop out this baby, and all you can think about is leaving and getting to Tara, and you wouldn't be in this situation if it weren't for her. But, when she goes home and rebuilds Tara after she loses her mom and her father goes mad, she rebuilds the place that she loves so much and brings it back to how it used to be. And she also conquers all the horrible tragedies she had to face in her life towards it, when she lost her daughter and everything else that happened. It's hard not to love somebody who is like a phoenix, that every time they burn, they rise out of their ashes and become a better person and become stronger and make the world a better place. And I also believe it's because even though what happened and what Southerners did to the African American population was horrible, if you look at it on the other hand, of the beautiful plantations and the housing, the architecture and debutantes, balls, culture, it was just beautiful, and it meant taking time out of your life to live a slow life instead of a fast-paced life. And that's how I try to look at it, because obviously it was a very horrible time and no one likes to think that our ancestors did such horrible things. But on the positive side of it, it's a beautiful, family-filled, very positive culture that we all look out for each other and care for each other and try to build each other up.
I agree with a lot of what Hayden said. I think one of the main things that kind of keeps it relevant in this culture, I feel like anything that's donned a classic, just it's like a must read, which is going to kind of trickle on. But I think the point of the story of her being such a feminist and her being so different, even though women today don't face the same obstacles, I think even now with the opportunities that women have, it's still always humbling to kind of go back and see what's so common now, what's so normal now, was such a big deal back then. And I think that that's what made the book somewhat big back in the 30s, and now that it's more common, it's kind of like a step back to see like what she's doing was so out of character for women, especially in the South, where you're supposed to be on your P's and Q's and you're supposed to be very quiet and meek and led by men and that kind of thing. And it's totally not the case now. But going back and seeing how big of a deal it is, it kind of makes you realize that there's so many opportunities for us that we take advantage of sometimes. And so I think that just getting a glimpse into the past is what makes things so popular in the present, if that makes sense. So yeah.
The reason that I think that it endures is because, like I mentioned earlier, is because it's so epic, it's so big, it's so grand, and I think sometimes when you think about the South, you think about it, big. Everything is big. Like Scarlett her personality is big. Like everything is really over the top, and there's so many layers of all the different things that are going on. So you have a love story that's taking place during a war, and all of these different people who have different perspectives all coming together. So I think that it makes it relevant. Like even if you care for the characters or you didn't care for the characters, I think there's absolutely something that you can discuss it just from a perspective of one of the characters. If you wanted to talk about politics or race or the gender, being a female, being a male, there's so much that you can talk about. So I think that that's really why it's like a classic that can kind of endure, and people can always pick it up and have a relevant conversation, which we are doing now, and that's the reason that I think that it's still like a pop culture thing. Because if someone who hasn't even read the book, if someone says Scarlet and Rhett, their head, just to think about a story that was created that everyone kind of knows and just has a reference point, like that's a big thing, that's a big deal. So I think that it's will continue to endure, and people will either be on the side of loving it or hating it, or loving a character or identifying with a character or despising a character, and that's what makes a great story a great story. People loving it or hating it. So that's the reason I think it endures.
I agree with everything Tabitha said. I think the relatability is the human struggle is the same. Whether I look at it from the perspective of the pressure. There's still the pressure to be insert your adjective here. To be the prettiest, the richest, the most popular, the thinnest. The community back in those days there were different struggles, but the same struggles. You know, you still saw signs of trying to keep up with the Joneses. You know, she talks about having her waist cinched to, you know, 18 inches or whatever it was. And I think that that type of thing, the humanity, obviously, it transcends all time. So I think that that's what makes it so relatable. And like Tabitha said, it still will trigger conversations about like things, obviously in a different area, but still the same topics.
I think one of the things that this does, which you see with a lot of books that deal with war, but this one not only deals with the effects of the war as they're happening and what people are dealing with, but also the aftermath of it, what it took to rebuild after that, and like the kind of strength that it took. And I think like it's easy to look at it and be like, oh yeah, look at Scarlett and how she did whatever she did, and she was willing to like make people basically ostracize her because of how she was doing things, but she got done what she needed to get done. And so you can look at that, but it also shows like that wasn't the only type of strength that people needed in order to survive, because you look at like Mellie and what she did, like when the whole thing happened with them, when Frank died and Ashley came in, and like Mellie totally got that when Rhett brought him in, it was like, Ashley's drunk, we need to put him to bed, and Scarlett was just like, I don't understand what's happening, why Ashley doesn't get drunk, and all this stuff. And you're like, the strength that you need is not always like the in-your-face loud personalities. It takes different people. And then like Tabitha and Cindy have talked about just the issues that are still relevant to us today. And I think probably for all of humanity will probably be relevant. And that it touches on so many of those topics that basically you can just pick this up, and I mean, it's basically going to cover a whole multitude of issues that you could need to talk about with other people.
I mean, I guess I don't really have anything to say but to echo what everybody else has said. I do think it's because it is such an epic saga, and it's not just a snippet of the war or a snippet of Southern culture or a snippet of the Reconstruction. It's the whole thing. It was, you know, a little bit of culture before the war and the build-up, and then the war and the struggle of the war, and then I just think because and it's something we can talk about and continue to talk about because there are so many different things that, you know, go on in the book. So I think that's why it persists. Is there's such a multitude of characters and different people that you can identify with or not identify with or aspire to be like. So I just, yeah, that was kind of echo what everybody else said.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah that, you know, most everybody's kind of hit on the main points of why it endures. I think that it's just very authentic. There's an authenticity to it because there's not like some obvious plot and plot line that's going through it necessarily where you're like, oh, where's the twist going to be? Or, you know, like it's not twists like that that are contrived. It's like life happening while it happens. You know, like even Gerald's death, like how it happens is not, you know, like it's not some twist, like he dies, but not exactly how you would think. But then when you think back to the beginning of the book, you're like, well, that's, you could have seen that coming. And I think that's part of why it's just like authentic to real life. And I think another reason why is kind of Rhett talks about it kind of toward the end of it, of the book. He says lots of different things, but one of the things he says is, this isn't the first time the world's been upside down, and it won't be the last. It's happened before, and it'll happen again. And when it does happen, everyone loses everything, and everyone is equal. And I think even if you look in our world, you know, like in different places of the world. There's always somewhere in the world where life is being flipped upside down by turmoil, and everyone has to kind of like start over. And I think that's, you know, you'd think we'd learn from that, but we don't. But, you know, he talks about like the people who endure because they know how to change and be flexible. And I just think it just shows all the different aspects of humanity that are alive and work out there, and kind of that life repeats itself over and over, you know, as different cultures move on and different generations move on, and we kind of flip and we do it again, but in a different way.
I actually Googled it, so I found this piece on the Washington Post in 2015 that's like an opinion article talking about why the book and the movie both endure over time. And it summarizes pretty much what we've been saying, that Scarlett is rejecting like Confederate nostalgia and breaks with almost every norm that governs how Southern women are supposed to behave and think, with the exception of the race piece. And so I think that that is probably the enduring reason. I agree with this author that because she breaks with so many cultural norms in an attempt to move her story forward, I think that's really why it endures and tells the story. Well, it tells a version of the story at the time.
Yeah, such great thoughts. One of the things Jen M said in the comments was it's a story about the unattainable, and I just thought that was so true and such a great segue to our next question, because Ashley very much represents the unattainable and this way of life that existed, you know, in some ways in the minds of the Southern people in the book, right? And Hayden, you touched on this too, but it's like there is this incredible beauty that is created with these gorgeous plantations, but then, you know, just behind it is this mess of slavery, to say the very least. And, you know, that's why one of the reasons it was called like the Gilded Age, right? Because it was basically, gilding was taking gold, was layering gold on top of gold. So super superfluous, just crazy extravagance, and then kind of just that like layered way of living and like looking at the world. And I mean, like Hayden said, the Gilded Age, like the architecture, I mean, it's just incredible. I could spend all day looking at gilded homes, just, you know, on Pinterest or whatever, because they're just absolutely incredible, and the beauty is just undeniable. And when I think about that it's like that unattainable beauty that was like attainable for just a minute by a very select group. And I feel like that's almost the essence of the novel in some ways. And there's, you know, the main quote, or the main quote, I guess the kind of the famous quote, although there's a lot of them. I shouldn't say that. I'm going to be quiet and just read the quote. So this is towards the end, but it talks about this way of life, and this is Rhett talking, and it ends in a paraphrase of Ashley, but Rhett says, "I still laugh, but I've reached the end of roaming, Scarlett. I'm 45, the age when a man begins to value some of the things he's thrown away so lightly in youth. The clannishness of families, honor and security, roots that go deep. Oh no, I'm not recanting. I'm not regretting anything I've done. I've had a hell of a good time, such a hell of a good time that it's begun to pall, and now I want something different. No, I never intend to change more than my spots, but I want the outer semblance of the things I used to know, the utter boredom of respectability, other people's respectability, my pet, not my own, the calm dignity life can have when it's lived by gentle folks, the genial grace of days that are gone. When I lived those days, I didn't realize the slow charm of them. There was a glamour to it, a perfection, a symmetry, like Grecian art." And oh my gosh, I read that line probably like 10 times over, just that beautiful slow charm. And with seasonal living, that's really what I want to create. You know, I really think that there is a way to, I know there is a way to live life with that slow charm, whether that's just enjoying like white wine on your porch or balcony, just and living kind of almost in like a state of resistance in a culture that's so just more, and do more, and, you know, nobody can keep up with it. And it's just like stopping and enjoying intentional moments, because that was so much of what the South was about. I mean, the barbecue scene in the beginning was just absolutely my favorite. I just loved the idea that, you know, they go to a barbecue in the morning and they go home and take a nap, or they don't go home, but they take a nap, and then, you know, there's a ball at night. And yeah, I just love that they had that community and they were all so interconnected, and I really think that that is worth emulating. So Hayden, I'm going to pass the ball to you. What do you think we can take away from Gone with the Wind and the broad sense, or take it from kind of that slow charm perspective, either one?
Well, you totally stole my win because I completely agree with everything you said, so I'll go off on my other one. Look at where we're at today. We have our first female presidential nominee. Look at where we are. We've had our first African American president, and no matter what you believe in or agree with, that is something to really think about, because we still don't get paid what men get paid. We're still not taken seriously when we're dramatic or emotional. There are just so many things that we take for granted that men take for granted that's a struggle for us in everyday life. And Scarlett saw that, and she stepped outside the norms to get stuff done. And I think that's something we can take from her and the culture behind it, is that we are strong and we are phoenixes, and no matter what happens to us, we can rise up out of the ashes and be better and do better for the next generation and for everyone that's already here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think being less apologetic about standing up for ourselves or standing up for our actions, and, you know, a lot of times it can be passed on or made little because we're emotional, or, you know, they make like the time of the month jokes if we get really passionate about something or really upset about something, and not being apologetic for that. But I also think that even though we all kind of like agree to disagree on how we feel about Scarlett, I feel like there's that underlying tone of persistence and determination that she has, and that's kind of something that I've taken from her character, was really just to be persistent. If plan A fails, there's, you know, plan B, plan C, and so forth, and to really just push for what you want. Maybe not necessarily in the way she did, but in general, just to kind of keep going and not take no for an answer.
I would say appreciate what you have. I felt like, you know, there were moments where, you know, when you don't, with Scarlett, there were moments where something was gone, but it, you know, she didn't appreciate it when she had it. Like, she didn't appreciate until she lost a child. She didn't appreciate having friends until they were gone. So I think that that's one of the things that I would think about, is, you know, to appreciate the things that we have, because it's the small things that actually make our lives enjoyable. You know, you might want to fight and struggle and, you know, want to get to the top, but, you know, if you're at the top and you're lonely, what is that? So I think that would be my takeaway.
I think my takeaway is I do echo everything that everyone else has said. I completely agree with that. But I also take away that sometimes it's a good idea to revisit your priorities, and maybe take a step back, you know, and just to remember that times change, people change, you change, so your priorities might change. So, you know, taking a pause, reflecting on, okay, this was important, you know, last week, you know, last month, last year, or 2 years ago, or in Scarlett's case, several years ago. But is this what I really want or need now? So maybe just, you know, obviously hindsight is 20/20, but, you know, being self-aware in that regards, to take the pause, take the time, and reevaluate priorities. I think if she'd have done that and kind of looked at all the stuff that she was missing, all the stuff that she was taking for granted, and all the stuff that she lost, I think that, you know, she had been a little bit more emotionally mature. I think she wouldn't have missed out on so much, I think.
Okay, literally every single thing that I was going to say has already been said. So, Sarah, I'll just pass it to you.
I kind of just have to agree with what's been said as well. I really did. I think that was, yeah, probably one of the most frustrating things, is how blind Scarlett was to the people around her, and really appreciating people. So I think that's probably one of the lessons that could be taken away, and maybe the one that resonates the most with me. But I think there's probably a lot that could be learned from this book for sure. Jaina?
I think that foresight is kind of important. I think that Rhett exemplifies that. He has foresight. He sees what's coming. He knows it's foolish. He doesn't put ideals in front of, what's going on, but he plans ahead. Maybe not in the most positive way, but he does have foresight. And I think that for the South in general, and, this is a problem in the story because that's kind of why they lost. They didn't have foresight enough. They relied on the North for goods. They produced, cotton and stuff. They didn't have any factories. They didn't have foresight to think of, like, do I need these things? And so I think in the sense of, like, preparing, like, ahead of time, for as far as nations go, nations that don't produce usually do end up, that are indulgent and don't produce things for themselves and rely on other nations. That's usually kind of the downfall of a nation historically. Like Rome, when they became too many parties, too many festivals, indulging in those things, just overly enjoying life. I think that's also that can be dangerous, even though we should slow down and enjoy life, but that there's a balance, because if you have too much leisure and too much of that time, that means you're not creating a good, country or a good, state or whatever type of civilization you're aiming toward.
I'm going to kind of echo Hayden and Cindy. I think it's so important to really look at what Scarlett did, but she did do it all for Tara. She did it all so Tara would keep going and would survive and would thrive. But at the same time, I think it's important, like Cindy said, to think about priorities and to reevaluate your goals and to see what you're doing and how that affects those around you, while at the same time seeing those societal norms that maybe it's time to knock on a little bit and challenge, because without challenging ideas and concepts, you're never going to move forward. And I think that's the big thing that I really took away from the book.
Okay, awesome. Such great takeaways. Thank you guys, both book chatters and live chatters, and those of you who are watching the replay. Thank you for your willingness to take on these really kind of tough reads. I know we've had 3 in a row that were tough, but the next one's going to be really fun and breezy. We are ending the summer with The Night Circus, which is a young adult book. It has been so highly reviewed and so highly publicized. I just have a feeling that we're all really going to enjoy this next book, and it can be kind of like that fun beach/poolside read for you guys, because we really haven't done one of those this summer. That was kind of the oversight on my part. So I am just excited to kind of ease into fall and maybe catch up on some other reading that maybe you have in the works. And I know I have a stack of books in the works. I'm excited for something a little lighter in August, and if you're feeling that way too, I think you'll definitely find it in Night Circus. So as always, all the information for book club is linked right down below. We meet the last Thursday of every month, and so yeah, we'll be right here, same place, same time. I have all the dates and info in the description bar, and thank you guys so much for just taking the time to really invest in becoming a well-read community and becoming well-read women. As you know, that's such a core value to who I am and who, I want Paper and Glam to be from just a community perspective. And I just really want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to embody that, because there's just no substitute in life for being well-read. There isn't. And I appreciate other women who are committed to that as well. So have a fantastic night, and we will see you guys in August.